My name is Justin Maxwell, and I'm on the technical support team, and I'm located in Cleveland, Ohio. So I know a lot of people are from around the country, so thanks for joining us, and hopefully you can learn some stuff here as we go over planning your SolidWorks upgrade. What we're going to focus on are some common mistakes and how to avoid them. Since I am on the technical support team, it is a heavy part of our year working with people upgrading and installing that new version as it comes out. So let's get started. So most people right now are probably using SolidWorks 2019. That's the, I would say, current gen of SolidWorks out right now. But around this time of year, you might be getting that pop-up at the bottom right of your screen that pops up and says, hey, a new SolidWorks version is available for download. And then you can click on that little button and upgrade yourself from SolidWorks 2019 to SolidWorks 2020 this year. So a lot of people like to do that. A lot of people get that pop up. It gets you excited. You know, what's out there? Why should I upgrade? What are the benefits? What are the cons to upgrading? And that's kind of what we're going to focus on here. So the biggest question we always get asked is why upgrade, right? It comes out every year, but what's the point of upgrading to that new version, that SolidWorks 2020? There's a ton of reasons of why to upgrade, and I'm just going to go over a few of them from my perspective. The first reason is there's new features every single year. As you can see, this is the What's New document from SolidWorks 2019. We get one every single year. They're hundreds of pages long of a ton of new features. Some of those features are brand new to the CAD industry altogether. Some of those features come from other CAD programs that SolidWorks has or Dassault Systems has. And some of those features actually come from other CAD programs that we're hopping on the bandwagon and using now. So most of these features that come out are actually driven from user feedback. So there's always these things called enhancement requests that users can submit. If an enhancement request gets enough hits, it gets added to that next year's SolidWorks or in a couple years sometimes. But that list is all pretty much user driven. I think they come out and every year they say the percentage of user driven content that's added, and it's in like the 80th, 80 to 85% is user driven in those hundreds of pages of updates. So it's very important if there's a feature that you've seen before or that you think can be added to go on your SolidWorks customer portal and add an enhancement request to say that you want that in the software. More than likely, if it's a good idea, it's going to be added eventually. So it's kind of fun to track that, and you know, you get some kudos for adding something to the software. So it's pretty cool. Another reason is bug fixes. This one is huge, obviously. As service packs come out of any software, they're going to be trying to tackle bugs that were present in the versions before. That first year, or the first service pack of a software that comes out, especially in SolidWorks, tackles the most of those bugs. So that means from 2019 SP4 to 2020 SP0, there's actually over 200 SPRs that were fixed in that version upgrade. So 200 little bugs that existed before that now do not exist. Most of those bugs you're probably never going to see, all right? They're probably pretty little, but some of them could be pretty critical. There was a very critical one here now in 2020. So there's actually a 2020 Service Pack 0.1 that's out right now that fixes that specific bug. But you have to look out for that. You can look at the SPR list and see what was fixed. But that's a huge reason to upgrade, is better performance and fixing those bugs that come along the way. Speaking of performance, maybe you have new hardware, right? Maybe you have a 4K monitor and you want to stay up to date. If you stay up to date hardware-wise, you want to stay up to date software-wise as well. SolidWorks tests everything as these new hardware companies come out with new things. And if you want to utilize those to the best advantage, you're going to want to be on the most up-to-date version of SolidWorks. Performance is probably the biggest reason that I would say you want to upgrade to the newest version available. Again, SolidWorks is optimizing everything as that new version comes out, and it's always related to performance. Sure, new features is what they talk about in those what's new documents, because that's kind of the things we can show you, right? You can show you this cool new feature, but performance is the reason you really want to go to that new version. In 2020, the performance is dramatically better, especially in the drawings. So if you guys have drawings that are slow to open or slow to load, 2020 can tackle that, as well as larger assemblies as well, which is always the topic, is trying to improve performance in large assemblies. So SolidWorks knows that that's kind of the crutch, and they try to fix that every year. They try to make it better. Another big reason is you're on subscription. So if you pay for SolidWorks subscription services, that means you get technical support. So you can call into your local reseller and talk to a live person and get help with the software. But also you get those updates. So you're paying for them by being on subscription. You might as well use what you're paying for. So being on support, as I said, installations are a pretty common question that come into our support line. So I thought this might be interesting to go over a little bit about when people upgrade. Excuse me. So when people upgrade, as you can see, October is when the new version comes out. So that's when 2020 is released. As you can see, that's the lowest point of installation cases on this calendar. As the new year comes, so as November, December, and then into January come, you can see that dramatically increases. So that new version is released, and then it climbs up. The first week of the year is actually our highest volume of installation calls. That's usually around the release of Service Pack 2. But I think it's more based on people's schedules, right? The end of the year, as engineers, a lot of people take off for vacation. The IT people get to upgrading your machines. You come back from the new year and, oh, wow, look, we have a new version of the software sitting here on our computers. That's probably the biggest reason, but also that service pack schedule is pretty important. And we're going to talk about that a little bit of when to upgrade. And then as you can see, it slowly tapers off, but it stays pretty heavy throughout the year. Again, it starts dipping down as the next version is about to be released. So this kind of gives you an indication of when to upgrade, but it's more an indication of when most customers upgrade, at least from CATI's perspective. All right, so let's get started on the 10 common mistakes that people make as they upgrade SolidWorks. We're going to start off with number 1, and that is upgrading without testing. I have this as number 1 because I think this is the most important thing when it comes to upgrading SolidWorks or really any software on your computer. Testing is extremely valuable, and there's a ton of things that you need to test for as you go to that new version. You need to test your workflow. So what that means is have a test machine, upgrade it to the newest version, and test it using your day-to-day workflow. You might find something that doesn't work in that newest version, or maybe you might find things that work better. So test your largest files, your most critical needs, and just your workflow in general. Play around. We usually like customers to have a test machine running for a couple days, maybe a week, before you go and you try to upgrade everyone. Because the last thing you want to do is upgrade and then notice that something doesn't work right or something works differently now in that new version. You want to test your hardware, any third-party programs that work with SolidWorks as well. So I'm talking CAM softwares or 3D printing softwares, anything that integrates with SolidWorks, you want to test. That also means you might need to upgrade those softwares. As you upgrade SolidWorks, maybe Mastercam doesn't work with it anymore. You need to get to the newer version. So again, testing those things. Hardware is a huge one, right? Like I was talking about, a 4K monitor. Those might work differently in SOLIDWORKS 2019 than they did in SOLIDWORKS 2016, right? As this new hardware is being released, SOLIDWORKS is matching. It could be a little different. So always test that stuff. Your specific environment is different than everyone else's. So you need to test your environment. You need to test connecting to your network, sharing files the way that your company does, all that stuff that's specific to your specific company. You also want to check out the What's New guide and test out some of those new features. The What's New guide, as I said, comes out every year. It has a ton of information. Here's some top enhancements that came out with SOLIDWORKS 2020 this year. There's different dimension techniques, different ways to pattern and mate in assemblies. There's comparing tools for bodies, and then there's a ton of part and feature changes as well. A lot with graphics bodies and mesh bodies. So there's all these new things that get added. They might make your workflow better. So you want to go through the What's New document and test it out and see what might help you guys. Obviously, you could upgrade to SOLIDWORKS 2020 and still use it like it's an older version, but that's not going to be the most beneficial. So always play around with the What's New, especially the top enhancements. This little page I screenshotted. Those are the ones that usually are the most impressive. And the other huge one is you need to review the system requirements. This is a really big one in SOLIDWORKS 2020 because we're getting to that point in the hardware to software lifespans that a lot of things are getting phased out. And I think I have some screenshots here. Yep. So as you can see here, in SOLIDWORKS 2019, this was a big one last year. Windows Server 2012 was no longer supported. So if you had a license manager sitting on a Windows Server 2012, and then you upgraded to 19, all of a sudden it didn't work anymore. And that was a big deal. This coming year, that includes 2012 R2. So you need to be on server 2016 or 2019 for any of those server products. That's the license manager and everything in the PDM and electrical product suites. You need to get on Windows Server 2016. So that's extremely important to know, and you wouldn't know that unless you looked at the system requirements before you upgraded. I can't tell you how many people have called us after upgrading or after attempting to upgrade saying, hey, my Windows Server isn't allowing me to install, and I've already installed SOLIDWORKS on so many client machines. Well, now we need to upgrade the server. If you would have checked the hardware requirements, that would have stood out, right? So, and of course, it warns you the second you start the install, but based on how you go about it, that could not work. Another big one here in SOLIDWORKS 2020 is that SQL 2012 is no longer supported. So again, that's for like PDM and electrical. If you have those sitting on a SQL server, that's SQL 2012, that needs to get upgraded. There is an end of life of 2021 SP5 for SQL 2014. So they tell you this stuff well in advance, as long as you're a little bit aware and you look at these things. As you can see, there's also in the hardware requirements the end of life schedules for everything. Another big one is 2020 SP5 is the last version of SOLIDWORKS that's going to be able to run on Windows 7. So we want everyone to get upgraded to Windows 10. That's a big one because that's your client machines, right? So some companies have hundreds of these Windows 7 machines laying around. Before upgrading to 2021, we're going to need those upgraded as well. Another one is Excel and Word, so the Office suite, 2013. That's going to be phased out for 2020 SP5 as well. So again, this is for next year coming forward. Office and Windows are going to probably need to be upgraded if you're still on those older versions. And what these end of life schedules are based on is Microsoft's end of life. So if Microsoft is no longer supporting Excel or Word 2013, then SOLIDWORKS is not going to allow you to use it. as a prereq. So it's not like SolidWorks is coming out and saying, you know, we don't want you to use these anymore. This is because Microsoft is no longer supporting those products. So it kind of drives us to do the same. All right. So that was number one. Make sure that you test. Number two is upgrading too early. So this one is super common as well. Say you get that pop-up, you say, oh, cool, there's a new version available, right? I might as well upgrade to the nice new version that I've seen. Maybe I saw a what's new presentation on and there's some cool features. I'm going to upgrade. If you upgrade yourself to a new version and you work with other people, you could get into a bad situation. The best option is to upgrade everyone at the same time. So if you're a one-man operation, then sure, upgrade to 2020 right now if you wanted to. No problem at all. But if you work with anyone else on a day-to-day basis, you're going to want everyone to upgrade at the same time. The biggest reason is because as a file is opened in 2020, it's now permanently a 2020 file. So you open it and then you save it, and then now that file is stuck in 2020. It cannot be opened and used properly in 2019 anymore. Sure, there's ways around that a little bit, where you can send the geometry only as like a step file, or in 2019 SP5, you can open it up as what we call dumb geometry. So it's the same thing basically as opening a Parasolid or a step, but it's not the same file. You don't have the history, you don't have the tree, you can't edit features. So it's extremely important to be on the same version as the people that you're working with. Number three is upgrading too late. Now, this one is more for pretty large customers, I would say, because really, I mean, upgrading too late, that's not a big deal. But if you find a bug or anything in the software that's messing up your workflow, and it's too late in the year, we're probably not going to be able to fix it. But if you find a bug earlier in the year, there's a good chance we're going to get it into a service pack. So if you're a large customer and you wait until Service Pack 4 to come out, which comes out late in the year, and then there's a critical bug, sure, we're going to escalate it to corporate. We're going to get the software designers to try to add that to the software or fix it in the software, but they're already working on next year's version. So if it's too late in the year, they're probably not going to be able to get to it in time, or we're going to have to issue like a hot fix or something like that that's specific to you. So it's much better in the beginning of the year to find a bug. So again, test earlier in the year. If there is something that's critical, we can probably get it fixed. A lot of people think too that, well, if I wait until Service Pack 5, most of the stuff is going to be fixed. Well, that may be true if you're lucky enough that someone else does the same exact workflow you do, which is pretty unlikely, right? Everybody does things a little bit differently. So it's important to test your specific workflow. Number 4, forgetting about PDM. And this goes along with other add-in products as well, but PDM is the one that we see the most. And the reason that this is a number in our top 10 things is because PDM is extremely important as you upgrade SolidWorks. If you also have PDM, PDM needs to be upgraded alongside SolidWorks. You want it to be the same version, and that's so it works. You cannot have SolidWorks be newer than PDM, or else PDM doesn't understand the files, it doesn't understand the file relations, and all that stuff is the reason that we use PDM. So most companies do this, but the upgraded procedure is both PDM and SolidWorks at the same time. That's the easiest way to do it too anyways, so it makes sense, and it is the easiest as well. Number 5 is not updating your graphics driver. So this is a hardware thing. Your graphics card on your machine is specific to your computer. And graphics cards and drivers are tested every year as SolidWorks is upgraded. All those hardware things are upgraded as well. SolidWorks tests SolidWorks 2020 with all the newest graphics cards and graphics drivers. We have a couple ways of telling you that your graphics driver is out of date or it's in date. But each version has its own specific requirements. So if you have SolidWorks 2018, it's going to need a different driver than if you have SolidWorks 2020. This can cause some headaches if you have both versions installed, but you typically want to be on the newest one. So you'd want to upgrade to the one that works in SolidWorks 2020. You can check this using the SolidWorks RX. So this is a program that you can access in SolidWorks itself, or in your Windows Start menu. You could type in SolidWorks RX, and it tells you a lot of information about your computer. As you can see, if you're in the RX, it will pop up and tell you in the Diagnostics tab that your driver is certified possibly, but it's for an older release of SolidWorks, or maybe it's not certified at all. And it'll tell you here right in the top section of the Diagnostics tab. The nice thing about this RX is there's a link that says download latest driver that you can click to download that driver. And then once you click on that and download it, install it, then you get a green check that says your graphics card is now supported. The driver's up to date. You're good to go. So you want to make sure you get that green check. Graphics problems are by far the most common thing that we see on support because it impacts everything. It impacts performance, it impacts features, things don't look right, or things get really, really slow graphically. And that stuff can cause frustration, and you can call us and we can help you out with this, no problem. But this is one of the first things that any technical support person is going to check, that your graphics driver is on a certified version. And that includes the card itself. You need to have a card that is supported and tested with SolidWorks. You can also check on solidworks.com. If you go there and click into the hardware requirements and then click into graphics drivers, you can fill out this little drop-down list, as you can see on the top of this here, and it will show you the specific driver that you need that version of SolidWorks. Now in 2019, this was really easy because it told you the specific driver for almost every single card. Now in 2020, they update it a little bit because they test a lot more, and the graphics drivers are getting updated extremely frequently. So in 2020, it kind of looks a little different, and this is confusing a lot of people, where instead of saying the exact driver you need, it's saying this R430 branch, which is an NVIDIA branch of drivers. What that's saying is that entire branch of drivers is certified for SolidWorks. So if you click on that R430 link, it takes you to the NVIDIA website, and you just have to fill out this other drop-down list, find your specific type of graphics card. So here's, I'm saying the Quadro series for notebooks, saying the P4000, and then when you hit the search button here, it gets you a list of all the different drivers that are approved for your card. So what we typically do is just pick the newest one, which is up at the top. You click on that, and you download it straight from NVIDIA now. So this is specific to the NVIDIA cards, but it's something that caused a lot of confusion because a lot of people have these NVIDIA Quadro cards. But that's it. You just click on the link, you fill out another drop-down list, and then it tells you what drivers you can get. And any of them are certified is what I'm being told by SolidWorks. So you don't have to pick the newest one, but typically that would be the smartest choice. All right, so graphics driver. Number 6 of our top 10 mistakes that people make when upgrading SolidWorks is missing the toolbox. The toolbox is an add-in that's included with SolidWorks Professional, and it's probably our most popular add-in. It's our hardware and fastener library. We see this message all the time. Pops up after you install that new version, and it says that it's not the expected version. So there's 2 reasons that this can happen. One is that you didn't upgrade Toolbox, or two, that you're just looking at the old version of the toolbox still. So sometimes when you upgrade, you make a new version completely, right? You keep it separate from that old version. So you might have two toolboxes on your computer or on your network if you're using a shared environment. If you're still looking at last year's version of the toolbox, then you're going to get this message. If you need to update it, there are utilities that we can use to update them. They're stored on your computer. I would probably call technical support and just say that you're getting that message and we can help you out. We can upgrade your toolbox if it needs it. It's actually an option in 2020 this year to not upgrade toolbox as you install SOLIDWORKS. So that's actually a really beneficial option. But if you accidentally do that and you need to, we can always update it afterwards. If you're just pointing in the wrong location, it's easy enough to fix by just clicking in your system options. When you click on Whole Wizard Toolbox, you can just browse to a new location. As you can see, I've got a ton of SOLIDWORKS data folders on my computer. I just tell it to look at the right one and hit OK, and then that fixes everything. So if you do just need to change it because it needs to change to the correct version, it's just right here in System Options, Whole Wizard / Toolbox. You just browse to the right folder, and then that fixes everything up. Number 7 is not adjusting the installation options. This one, almost everyone does. No one usually adjusts their installation options unless you're working with someone that's done it before, or you're a little OCD, which most people on technical support are. And what I mean by adjusting installation options are telling it specific locations to put certain file sets. So in download options, the one option that I always turn off is the background downloader. It's a nice tool for most people, but I typically don't like having that background downloader. What the background downloader is that pop-up at the bottom of your Windows screen that pops up and says, hey, there's a new version. Do you want to download it now? And you click on it and you update it. Most people have that, sure. But do you need it? Not really. It could actually download on its own, so it could slow down your computer or your bandwidth downloading in the background when you don't need it to. And as different service packs come out, you might not even be able to upgrade to a new service pack unless your whole company does. So having this always downloading in the background can actually be kind of a problem. So I usually turn that to do not use when I'm installing SOLIDWORKS on my own computer. In installation location, I always recommend installing to a location that's specific to the version that you're installing. By default, SOLIDWORKS installs to C, Program Files, SOLIDWORKS Corp. As you install and upgrade to newer versions, it adds more and more subfolders to that SOLIDWORKS Corp folder, right there in Program Files. So if you ever have an issue or you're trying to find something specific, it's almost impossible to browse through all those subfolders. They just get like parenthesis 2, parenthesis 3, parenthesis 4. It's very hard to navigate through that stuff. So what I do is hit that change button next to my installation location and change it to say SOLIDWORKS 2019 instead of SOLIDWORKS Corp or SOLIDWORKS 2020. SOLIDWORKS 2020. Whatever the version is that you're installing, make a folder right there in Program Files that's specific to that version. The same thing goes with the toolbox. Always make a new toolbox folder and signify in the name of that folder what the year is that you're installing. Maybe even the service pack of what you're installing. But typically service packs, you don't need to make new folders every time. So I always have a SOLIDWORKS Data 2020 on my computer, instead of just SOLIDWORKS Data 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Get really confusing. Number 8 is not updating your system options after you upgrade SOLIDWORKS. This one's huge. SOLIDWORKS upgrades from, say you're upgrading from 18 to 19. As you do that, there's a lot of folder locations that are going to change, right? Your symbol libraries, your document templates, all those things are stored in version-specific folders. SOLIDWORKS usually changes automatically to the new version that it's supposed to. But a lot of times it doesn't because you've customized things, right? Maybe you have your own custom folder somewhere that you're pulling your symbol library from. Right? It could be anything. SolidWorks doesn't want to change anything that was customized, so it doesn't. It leaves it as it is. So what I like to do is after I upgrade from one version to the next, I go to File Locations in your System Options, and then I hit the Edit All button. That brings up this nice Edit All File Locations pop-up that shows all the different file locations that SolidWorks is looking at. So you can see like my custom property files is looking actually at a desktop folder on my computer. The nicest thing about this Edit All File Locations, though, and not many people know, is there's a Find and Replace at the bottom left. There's a button that you can hit. As you hit that button, you can say, find anywhere it says 2018 and replace it with 2019. Or if you're going to 2020, find anywhere it says 2019 and replace it with 2020. If all your folders are not completely renamed to something, strange, then that's going to fix all of your locations that we're looking at version-specific folders. So you hit that Replace All, it changes all of them in one click, and then you're good to go. So that one's huge. Go back to that screenshot. So that's in System Options, File Locations, and then you hit Edit All. And that'll show you all your file locations. I've worked with people that have been using SOLIDWORKS 2019 all year so far. And then I'll click in and see, oh, you haven't had your diameter symbols showing this entire year because it's looking at last year's folder, right? So this might be something you even want to check today on your own computers. Just make sure that your file locations are pointing to the right location and you're not missing anything that you didn't even know you were missing. Number 9 is forgetting about upgrading the server as well. So a lot of people will upgrade their seat of SolidWorks. This is especially true in big companies that you have a lot of seats of SolidWorks, and one person upgrades. And then you try to launch SolidWorks and it says, hey, I can't find a license for SolidWorks. What it's actually saying is that it can't find a license for the version that you're trying to launch. So before you upgrade any client machines, you need to also upgrade the license manager on the server. And that could, in this year, require a server upgrade as well, as we saw in the very first and number 1, upgrade without testing. So you always have to upgrade your network license manager, and it needs to be upgraded before any of the client machines, or the client machines will not work. That's it. So it has to be newer. After it's upgraded, you need to activate it. So you launch the SNL, and it tells you, hey, do you want to pull a new license file and activate this? That gets it up to the newest version. You have the newest license. You're able then to allow people to use SOLIDWORKS 2020 at that point. That worries a lot of people, though, because, okay, does that mean it's version specific? Kind of, but older clients will always work with a newer license manager. So it's backwards compatible. Upgrading your license manager is not going to affect anybody that doesn't upgrade. So that's a usual question, right? If I upgrade my license server to 2020, does everyone have to get on 2020 immediately? And the answer is no. You can stay on any older version. You could use SOLIDWORKS 2012 with a 2020 license manager. There's no issue there. All right. And then number 10, the last thing, is not asking for any help. So the reason I add this is, again, I work in technical support. Most people that call with installation questions are calling after there's been an issue, right? So you call and you say that the install failed or the install broke, and then we ask those questions. Did you test? Did you check the hardware requirements? Did you check your graphics driver? All those things that you probably should have done before. But if you ask for help, we're going to walk you through that stuff. So we're here to help. If you have any questions or run into any problems, always call your reseller. At CATI specifically, we support all of our customers' activation and installation issues, whether or not you pay for subscription. So if you just have a seat of SolidWorks that you bought, I don't know, 4 years ago from CATI, you can't get it installed or you can't get it activated, you can still call our support line. Just go on cati.com, go into the support section, find our number, and give us a call. So to answer the question, why upgrade, right? I would say, why not upgrade? There are so many benefits to upgrading SolidWorks that you probably just should. uh, there's not many cons to it, as long as you follow the procedure and you check off that checklist as you go. You call and ask for help if you need it, and then again make sure that your hardware and your environment can use the newest software. If that's the case, there's no reason you shouldn't upgrade. You pay for it, you're going to have better performance, and it's going to be beneficial down the road.